It was the day before Thanksgiving, 1971. A quiet, well-dressed man walked up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter in Portland, Oregon. He paid cash, exact change, for a one-way ticket on Flight 305 to Seattle. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. He ordered a bourbon and soda while waiting for takeoff. He was polite to the flight attendants. He tipped well. And then, somewhere over the dark, rain-soaked forests of the Pacific Northwest, he jumped out of the back of a moving plane with $200,000 strapped to his body and was never seen again. Over 50 years have passed. The FBI investigated more than 1,000 suspects. Hundreds of thousands of pages of records have been compiled, searched, and re-examined. Newly declassified files were released as recently as 2025 and 2026. And still, nobody knows who D.B. Cooper really was, or whether he survived. This is the story of the only unsolved hijacking in the history of commercial aviation. At approximately 2:50 p.m. on November 24, 1971, Flight 305 lifted off from Portland International Airport bound for Seattle. On board were 36 passengers and 6 crew members, including a quiet man in a dark business suit, a black clip-on tie, and white shirt, wearing sunglasses and carrying a black attaché case. Shortly after takeoff, the man, seated in the rear of the plane, handed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a phone number and tucked it away without reading it. He leaned over and told her quietly, "You'd better look at that note." She opened it. It said he had a bomb. When Schaffner sat down next to him as instructed, he opened the attaché case just enough for her to see what appeared to be red sticks, a tangle of wires, and a large battery. He calmly dictated his demands, which she walked to the cockpit. He wanted 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve. He wanted $200,000 in $20 bills. He wanted to land in Seattle. And he wanted a fuel truck ready when they arrived. Authorities on the ground scrambled. The FBI was notified while the plane was still in the air. And then, remarkably, they complied. When Flight 305 touched down in Seattle, the ransom money and parachutes were ready and waiting. Cooper released all 36 passengers in exchange. He kept the crew. And he ordered the plane back into the sky. Cooper had very specific instructions for the flight crew. He wanted the plane to fly no higher than 10,000 feet. No faster than 200 miles per hour. Landing gear down the entire flight. And he wanted the rear air stair, a special fold-down staircase built into the back of the Boeing 727, to remain extended during flight. Airport authorities admitted they did not even know the rear stairs could be opened in mid-air until Cooper demanded it. At 7:40 p.m., the refueled plane lifted off from Seattle, heading south toward Mexico City, or so Cooper said. About 30 minutes after takeoff, somewhere over the heavily forested wilderness of southwestern Washington, the crew felt a slight change in pressure at the back of the aircraft. Cooper had lowered the rear stairs and jumped into a pitch-black sky. In freezing temperatures, rain pelting his face, wind screaming past him at nearly 200 miles per hour. Wearing a business suit, loafers, and a clip-on tie from J.C. Penney, the pilots landed safely in Reno. When investigators swept the rear of the plane, Cooper was gone. So was the money. So were 2 of the parachutes. What he left behind told investigators very little: a few cigarette butts, a single hair on the headrest, and that clip-on tie he had ripped from his collar before jumping. The FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in its history, codenamed NORJAK, Northwest Hijacking. Agents combed hundreds of square miles of rugged terrain on foot and by air. The military even loaned the Bureau a Lockheed State Route 71 Blackbird spy plane to photograph the suspected drop zone from above. Poor visibility and dense cloud cover made it useless. By the 5-year anniversary of the hijacking, the FBI had considered more than 800 suspects and eliminated all but 2 dozen. By the time the case was fully tallied, over 1,000 serious suspects had been investigated. Not one arrest was ever made. And then in 1980, nearly 9 years after the jump, came the only confirmed physical evidence ever recovered outside the aircraft. 8-year-old Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the banks of Washington's Columbia River, preparing a campfire pit for his family, when he pulled up 3 bundles of decomposing $20 bills. His parents contacted police. The serial numbers matched exactly. $5,800 of D.B. Cooper's ransom money, partially buried in the sand, rubber bands still holding the rotting bundles together. It was the only ransom money ever found. The remaining $194,200 has never surfaced, not in circulation, not in any bank, not anywhere. For decades, the black clip-on tie Cooper left behind was the most intriguing physical evidence in the case. FBI files newly declassified in 2025 revealed something remarkable that had never been fully disclosed. That tie was covered with more than 100,000 microscopic particles, including rare metals such as bismuth and unalloyed titanium. These are highly unusual materials not found in everyday environments. Investigators and independent researchers believe these particles suggest Cooper may have worked in a specialized industrial or manufacturing facility, possibly one with connections to Boeing or the aerospace industry. Someone who knew aircraft, who knew how planes were built, how their doors worked, and exactly what a rear air stair on a 727 could do. Forensic teams also extracted a DNA sample from the tie. It has been used to eliminate dozens of suspects, but it has never produced a confirmed match. Over the decades, a parade of suspects emerged. Some were credible. Most were not. The strongest was Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran, skilled skydiver, and helicopter pilot who pulled off an almost identical hijacking just 5 months after Cooper, jumping from a 727 with $500,000 in ransom. He was caught, convicted, and later killed in a prison escape shootout with the FBI. McCoy's own children came forward in 2023 with a parachute and harness they claimed had been hidden in a storage shed on their family's property for decades. They believed their father may have been Cooper. The FBI investigated, and ultimately determined McCoy did not match the physical description given by the flight attendants closely enough to be considered the hijacker. Other suspects over the years ranged from a former Air Force cargo loader to a retired engineer to a leather worker from the Pacific Northwest. A French-Canadian man named Robert Rackstraw was investigated for years and maintained a public profile as the alleged Cooper until his death in 2019. None were ever formally charged. And the one lead investigators always circle back to, the DNA on that tie, still has no confirmed match. Former FBI Special Agent Larry Carr said it plainly. He does not believe Cooper survived. The parachute he used could not be steered. It was a round military reserve chute, not the kind designed for precision landings. One of the 4 parachutes he had demanded turned out to be a training dummy, sewn shut and completely non-functional. There is reason to believe Cooper may not have realized this. He jumped at night, in a rainstorm, over a remote wilderness area. He was wearing loafers. His suit offered no warmth or protection against below-freezing wind chills at 10,000 feet. The terrain below, thick Pacific Northwest forest, rivers, ravines, would have been lethal even for an experienced skydiver. And yet, if Cooper died in those woods, where is the body? Where is the parachute? Why did $5,800 in ransom money turn up miles away along a riverbank, suggesting some of it made it to the water? And why has the rest of the money, nearly $200,000, never appeared anywhere in over 50 years? Some investigators believe he drowned in the Columbia River. Others believe his remains are somewhere in the Washougal River watershed, long since buried under decades of wilderness growth, or destroyed by the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, which reshaped much of the Pacific Northwest landscape. The FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case in 2016. But local field offices remain open to any physical evidence tied to the parachutes or the money. D.B. Cooper did not hurt anyone. He did not threaten violence beyond what was necessary to make his demands. He was calm, patient, and methodical. He left almost nothing behind. And then he stepped off the back of a moving plane into the dark, and the world never saw him again. Was he a military man? An aerospace worker? A daring amateur who got incredibly lucky? Or did that black Washington sky swallow him whole the moment he jumped? Over 50 years on, nobody knows. The FBI has no answer. The money has not been found. The identity has not been confirmed. D.B. Cooper remains the greatest vanishing act in the history of American crime. Who do you think he was? Drop your theories in the comments. This vault wants to hear from you. Hit subscribe and stay with us. Every case deserves to be remembered. We'll see you in the next vault.